Lord, dear God, we just thank you for this day. We know that you're our Creator, the Father of our Savior, Jesus Christ, and that through you all things are impossible. We just need to learn to set ourselves aside and let you be in control. Learn to get our wisdoms and our knowledge from your most holy word. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Ready? We have the ROTC from from Tomball High School. We have Chief Geyser is the lead guy. His ROTC guys are Michael Barnett, Anthony Pulso, and Antonio Peluso, Drake Seldith, and they're going to come up, post the colors, remain posting, remain standing, and go ahead.
Other guard. Hold. Left. Face. Present. Others. Ready. What?
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Remain standing, please. Laurie Quinn with Climb Management is going to sing God Bless America.
Actually, I'm going to say the first two words. This song?
If she's not going to sing it, she's going to lead it. This one is.
That one. By any chance, did Misty come in, our soloist? No. All right. Then we're going to sing God Bless America. So I'm going to begin it, and please join in, or the room will be very quiet. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Thank you. That was great.
Harry. Others. Ready. Up. Left. Face. Forward. March.
Are you coming back up? I need somebody to sit. So much. It's an encouragement to see these young men to make a decision at this time of their life in high school to be involved with the ROTC. How far they go, I don't know, but it's a great compliment to them to make that dedication to do that. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. We have our head table today is our two speakers are to my left, Paul Marshall, who's getting mic'd up here, and retired captain, U.S. Navy carrier fighter pilot. David Maulsby, the National Director for PTSD America, and they're stationed here in the Houston area. And Lori Quinn Klein, who's getting her plate in the back, will be up here shortly. And then we have Leanne Crone with Tomball. She's a director for the CBL, and Dave McGyver, who's with Wells Fargo Bank, and he's also a board member. So appreciate it. Give those guys a hand. And I have a few acknowledgments here to do, and surely don't want to. I want to say this: that we have a lot of different things here that are maybe flashy or showy or whatever, but have no doubt in your mind the reason we're here is because of you veterans. Okay, this is all to say that all the benefits that we have as Americans, and there are many, would not be there if the veteran had not stepped up and fought and gave his life. And for the returning veterans, just as well, having to live with the atrocities of war. I was in the Air Force and saw no combat, and but I say to you guys, because most of you probably were, I know one guy was a machine gunner, so I know he saw hot stuff firing coming at him and firing going away, and that's just, I'm just glad you're here and want you to know that we love you guys, and you're in a good program, and they're going to help you out. So the guys are Jason Connolly, USMC, Kenny Thomas, Corporal Army, David Williams, Sergeant Army, Michael Burrell, Sergeant Army, and Dennis Daniel, Army. And thank you again for being here. Jim, are you sitting there because you're going to keep them straightened out or what? Okay, all right. He can do it. Yeah, that's for sure. One other short acknowledgement. They have PTSD brochures on your table. They're for your taking. The flags are for your taking. And the Gideon Bibles are there for the taking. And we have 3 Gideons here today: Steve Blakesley, Larry Chapman, Jim Hunt, and myself. So I guess it's 4. Anyway, that's what we feel like we need to do is outreach, and please take the Bibles, and if you don't need it, give it to someone else. For the medallions that we have here at the head table and the flags are complimentary of Lori Klein and her company, Klein Management. We have several guys that I know personally that I'd like to recognize, but they're not any more important than anyone else. It's just to let you know that these guys are here and that you could talk to them if you want to. So when I call your name, just stand up. You don't have to remain standing or anything. And I wanted to also take a minute to recognize a past board member, Jack Fry, who was a prominent individual here in the Tomball community. He served in the Rangers Airborne during the Korean conflict in that area in the 50s. Did not see combat, but as a lot of you know, we lost Jack this year, and his family, the Fries, who are feeding us food today. I just wanted to recognize him for being there, like the many other millions of men who have served over the years. Our local, yep. Okay, local recruiters, sir, I'm sorry I didn't work you into that, but I'm sure you're okay on that, right? Army, U.S. Army recruiters are here today. And the other, just so you know, the Navy and the Marines and the Air Force didn't show, okay? So just to thank you guys, but I got a tough question for you. What is the starting salary of a beginning enlisted man in the service? Just ballpark. $1,561 plus he gets all his clothes, all his shaving, all his hair and his clothes, and gets the barracks to live in, and a bunch of guys to take cold showers with him. Yeah. Well, I can only say, and I know those of you who are there are my age, when I started in the Air Force, it was $75 a month. So, but I think fuel, gas was a quarter, so, Thank you for being here. We had started a program of having sponsors to help us financially get through this nonprofit that is really a nonprofit organization and try to keep our food costs covered, and that's all. We do not make profit on anything in these affairs. Salem Lutheran School is our sponsor for this event, but I have to say, because of this event and what it is, and we're offering free meals, that there have been a lot of other people who have stepped up and gave us money to quietly, they didn't want their names announced. So that's kind of how these things work. If you working under the strength and the guidance of God, those things just happen. We don't, I worry about them because I'm trying to pull it all together, but it always happens. The money always there, so it's great. So any of you who are here who have donated silently, I appreciate it. Houston Chronicle, the Potpourri gave us a good spread that I hope some of you saw and responded to. Lone Star College is great. They make these facilities available to us. Their technical staff is live here with us because they know guys like me don't do well with computers and much less standing up and speaking at the same time. So anyway, that Frankie and Cynthia, Cecilia, they set all these tables up, set the flags out and everything, and Laura, we thank you for letting them come and do that. Okay, we got our speakers are coming up now, Paul Marshall and David Maulsby. Paul is a retired captain, United States Navy, Naval Academy. He was on 3 campaigns on carriers during the Vietnam War and retired as a captain, in 93, Paul? Was it Paul? 93? Okay. And
Almost forgot how long ago it was.
time flies, doesn't it? Okay, let's make Paul welcome, and he's going to be with us for about 15 minutes, and then David Maulsby is going to come up. Thank you. That's your microphone on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. Well, Pat, if you had told us that you were going to sing today, we got 3 members of the Wynwood Presbyterian Church choir sitting out in the audience. Right. They could have led it.
Well, we're not through yet.
Okay.
So y'all just come on up.
And when I was asked to speak here, I thought I'd wear the appropriate attire. Unfortunately, I don't make those decisions in my family, but I did choose this. Mm-hmm. But this is what I wanted to choose, but my wife wouldn't let me.
Oh, man. That's pretty. I like that.
But I want to spend a few minutes speaking with everyone about, if I can figure out how to get out of this. Where's the escape button? Then minimize. Is that right, guys?
She said yes.
Where's min?
Take the mouse and put it up on the screen on minimize, I imagine. But I
Okay.
Might blow up.
Okay, I wanted to share with you, as Pat said, I served 3 tours on different carriers going to Vietnam. The aircraft that I flew was not particularly beautiful. Its primary function was for anti-submarine warfare, and this is what the Stoof looked like in S2. On my first tour, they did allow us to fly. We could have rockets and bombs and the rest of the armament that'll fit on any armed station on any aircraft. But the aircraft was not fitted. It was too slow. It was too big. It didn't have armor plating on it. It didn't have self-sealing tanks. So the second cruise that I took on a similar ship to this one, this is the Yorktown, which I think is retired in Norfolk right now, and a museum piece, which speaks a lot to how long ago I was in the military. Second cruise, we were doing shipping interdiction, trying to stem the flow of supplies coming into Haiphong Harbor that were feeding the North Vietnamese Army. We would normally work in conjunction with a destroyer or a small combatant river-type craft, and we'd intercept the supplies that were going into Haiphong Harbor. Later on, how do I get back up there? I transitioned to an attack carrier, the Coral Sea. And on the Coral Sea, my duty was to serve as the flight deck officer. I looked pretty mean there. If the truth were known, I had to borrow my wife's mascara to make that mustache look like anything. But in any case, the story I want to tell from here on in is about the Coral Sea. On the 8th of May in 1972, I had been aboard her for maybe 5 months. We were contacted by the President's office that said on 9 May 1972, we're going to launch a launch that's going to mine Haiphong Harbor. And the USS Coral Sea was the lead carrier in that operation. The strike group consisted of 6 A-6s and 6 A-7 aircraft, and they mined the outer harbor at Haiphong. Mines were in the water by 9 o'clock as President Nixon was giving a speech. Now, think back. Here's a carrier 50, 60 miles off the coast of Vietnam. Haiphong is probably 250 miles away. When do you launch the aircraft to make sure they're turning in to lay their mines at 9 o'clock as Nixon is coming on the TV? It's amazing to me that a carrier like Coral Sea, which had approximately 5,000 people on it, there was probably less than 250 on board that ship that knew what the heck we were doing that night. I got the call about 10:30 on the 8th of May and was told to plan this launch. Apparently it was very, very successful. The mines that were put in the water that day had a 72-hour activation delay. And the reason for that was there was 37 foreign flag vessels in the port of Haiphong Harbor at that time. 16 Russian, 5 Chinese, 5 Somalian, that was a surprise when I learned that, 5 British, 3 Poland, and 2 Cuban. And President Nixon advised them to clear Haiphong Harbor that these mines would go active in 72 hours. Only 1 British and 4 Soviet ships left the harbor, which was very, very surprising. The unusual thing about this whole episode is when you're a first-class midshipman, you go aboard a ship. After your plebe year, you go aboard the ship and you act as an enlisted man. So you scrub the decks, you paint, you go to the scullery and clean up after everybody eats. But your senior year, you go aboard as a junior officer. And one of the ships that I was assigned to was the USS Fortify, which was a minesweeper. That was in 1964. 10 years later, the USS Fortify was the lead minesweeper to clear all the mines in Haiphong Harbor. The unusual part about that is the commanding officer of the USS Fortify in 1974 was my classmate from the Naval Academy. And he complimented me on doing such a fine job, but of course I didn't do anything but launch the ships. It was the pilots that laid the mine. Anyhow, he said those ships were high and dry, the ones that didn't leave when they were advised to leave. One of the things that really aggravates me about any wartime situation, I think all the veterans in the room can relate to this, is 9 years earlier in 1965, General Wheeler and the Joint Chiefs of Staffs advised LBJ to mine Haiphong Harbor. that we had military superiority in the ground and in the air, and that would bring the war to a conclusion. For whatever reason, President Johnson chose not to do that for 10 years. During that 10 years, we ended up with 55,000 dead Americans. I personally know about 50 of them that are on the Vietnam Wall. And I was very, very bitter for a long, long time. And finally, somebody said, Paul, open up your Bible. So I'm going to open the Bible, and I'm going to read what it says in Romans 13:1. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. I don't know why God chose to not let Lyndon Baines Johnson let us mine Haiphong Harbor. But one thing I do know is that God's plan is superior to any man's plan. And I have to trust that what the scriptures say, which I think are divinely inspired, have given us direction that we are to accept authority. I guess you can look at how you accept that authority in a variety of different ways. You can rebel against it, you can live with it some way or another, or you can lead in trying to change the direction. And I'm suggesting that maybe we need to look at that alternative as we move forward in the next 5, 6, maybe even 2 years from now. And finally, I have left a sheet of paper, and I would ask everybody to maybe look at it. It's a typed sheet of paper that reflect my thoughts on being a Christian person in the U.S. military. The first thought I had was revere and honor God, and a reference I have provided you is Proverbs 1:7 and Proverbs 8:13. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. Love for God and love for sin cannot coexist. Number 2, choose friends that promote good behavior, ones you can look up to spiritually. And I quote Proverbs 13:20. I'm not going to read all of these. I've left them on the table for anybody that wants to take them. If you're a veteran, consider folding it up and stick it in your wallet. And the next time you pull out pictures of your family, maybe review them. The third one is be a man of your word, a man of truth. And again, a Proverbs verse. 4, accept your responsibilities to be a good influence. 1 Timothy 6:20. 5, be teachable. A successful person is ever learning and willing to receive instructions. 6, pick heroes and role models from men and women who honor God. And 7, develop an attitude of gratitude. So I hope that you take some of this message away with you, not just veterans, but I would think that these rules might apply to anybody going off to college or anybody that's going off to the workforce for the first time. So if you want to take them with you and share it with anybody else, that would certainly be my idea and suggestion. I guess, Pat, with that, I would like to have you come and introduce David, but before you do that,
Okay.
I would like to show you something that I hope David will address, if I can get it out.
Okay.
And we're going to ask David there are 22 flags on this. And maybe, David, you can address the significance of that number when you talk about Camp Hope.
Thank you, Paul. Give my hand. it's just pulls at your heart. I mean, I'm sorry. I can't say I feel guilty because I didn't have live service in the service. I was worked on aircraft, but you guys, it's just my hat's off to you is all I can say. And along that, last year we had two World War II veterans who were not able to make it. They thought they could make it, then they couldn't. Ken Ralston, who served with the General Burgess in the 100th Division, came known famous because they fought a battle in France called Bitche, Bitche, and you can imagine how they got turned around and they were called other things. So anyway, he was not able to make it, but he received a Presidential Unit Citation for the being in the German resistance and helping them. And then there was a Sergeant Ralston, that's the same guy. John Halstead, who I know personally, we have lunch 2 or 3 times a week at Hooks Airport. He's World War II, 1943, joined up in the Marines at 17, and got inducted into a unit that became known as the Raiders in the Marine Corps. I don't know if that's historically you guys remember what that is, but it was tough on those guys, and a lot of them went in, a lot of them didn't come out, and he got wounded 3 times in that campaign. Received 3 Purple Hearts, Silver Cross, the Navy. Sorry, I can't find my notes, but well decorated. He's got a disabled veteran's hat he wears that has the medals all around it, and he's not a bold man, but he likes people to know that he did serve our country. And in recognition, sorry, Bob Fleming, that I missed you a while ago. Bob was in the Army, and also Larry Chapman sitting back there in the back. He was in the heat of it in Vietnam, flew choppers, and was in there pulling them in and pulling them out, putting them in and pulling them out. And later went on, he was a warrant officer in Vietnam, later went in back into the Army and raised himself to lieutenant colonel and retired. And during that time, I'm not sure which time, but he says if he tells you everything he did, he'll have to kill you. So it's one of those kind of things. So he's very humble about the whole situation. And Don Campbell, where are you at? I know you had, okay, couldn't see your cowboy hat. He's Vietnam. He's with Army infantry, and was a part of an elite group of men who went and did things that we don't know about. So he's a real super guy. Jerry Reed, are you here? Oh, Jerry, right there. Okay, thank you for coming. He's a Vietnam veteran also, and so I think I've covered everyone on the acknowledgments. Now we have David Maulsby, Director of Post-Traumatic Syndrome Disorder for America. They're based here, but they have sub-offices all over the United States. I was telling John there a while ago, the first time I went in there, I drove down that road, is it Darrington? Darrington, and there were holes in that road. Half your car would be in it when you came out the other side, and there was some construction equipment out there, so I had to go see what was going on. And I drove by, and the sign said Camp Hope, and I said, well, that's an encouraging sign. So when I came back, I said, I got to stop and see what's going on here. So I did. I went in there and I met retired Captain Merriman, who spoke to us before, who was here last year with a group of guys. And therefore, my relationship with Camp Hope has continued on, and I want to continue to do that. But what I'm saying, trying to tell you guys, is you got a lot better than they had it 4 years ago. Was it just 4 years ago when all the holes were in the road, and they want all those buildings back there that are there, and they actually, well, I'm not going to say anymore because I know David's going to cover that. So David, a local Tomball resident, still, right? Come on up.
Good afternoon. Good to see everyone. I'm going to ask a couple of my guys to come on up and join me. Kenny and Chris, if you will. I want them to take a couple of minutes each and share just a touch of their story. I'll tell you this. It's an honor to be here with you and to share with you just a little bit about what God is doing on a little 5-acre campus just a few miles away from this place. I received an email, I believe it was, this particular one was Friday evening, a vet in the Austin area, and he sent 3 or 4 photos with it, but one was a picture of him, and he was on his bed, and he had displayed on his bed in that photograph about 50 different medications, pill bottles, that were prescribed to him by our friends at the VA. In that email, he talked about multiple times he had tasted the end of the handgun that he placed in his mouth, contemplating pulling the trigger. What we do at the PTSD Foundation of America doesn't make a real pretty picture or slideshow, just to be quite honest. We're often the last hope. Truly we are. 9.5 years ago when we began, as we describe it, as boots on the ground here in Houston, we literally did not own a paperclip. We owned nothing but a piece of paper that said we were a nonprofit. And we had a plan, we had a theory, we had an idea that we believed peer-to-peer support for our combat vets was the most effective way. And one of the main differences in what we do and what anybody else may do in regard to PTSD, particularly the VA, is we're faith-based, and we're not afraid to talk about that. The very first part in our manual of, I think, 10 units in that manual, the very first one is, where was God? The most natural question that any human being asks in a time of trauma. Why did God let this happen? So that's who we are, that's what we do. We'll talk a little bit more about that and about the number 22 and the importance of that. But before you hear from me about what we do, how many of you are here for the first time to hear about Camp Hope? This is the very first time you've heard about us. So to give some credibility, I believe in the old saying, the proof is in the pudding. So our staff are guys who've come through our program, completed it, stayed on with us, turning around, helping the next veterans come through. So 2 minutes, guys. We're short on time. All right, so Christian, will go first?
Yeah. Hello? Hello? All right, I'm just going to talk really loud. Hi, my name's Christopher Daniel. I served in the Army, and I deployed to Iraq. Seems like a simple task, but it's hard. It's not as, I don't want to go in too much depth because 2 minutes is not enough time to go into a lifetime of stories. So there's a sickness in the country, and that sickness was created out of sacrifice that we needed. That sacrifice is through blood and through spirit. I suffered from that sacrifice. Seeing the things that I've seen and the individuals that I've lost had got me to a turning point in my life where I may have looked successful on paper, continuing my life outside of the military, but when it came to what was internal with me, I was a walking corpse. I had no purpose, no drive. I truly didn't want to move on. I didn't want to open up people into my life because I was afraid of losing them. I isolated. I even suffered from suicidal and homicidal ideations. I tried to commit suicide by cop in Portland, Oregon. And that is when an individual from Camp Hope actually called and asked if I was ready for some healing. At first I was skeptical. I didn't believe it. I didn't think there was any help out there. I've been to the VA. I've taken countless amounts of medications to stop the side effects of other medications. But I ended up coming down here. Through that, I did have a motive when I did come down. I had the motive that I was going to prove that there was no help, that this was the last check of the box before I finished the job that I tried to start. I found a higher power that saved my life. I found a brotherhood, a camaraderie. The best way to describe it is I filled a God-sized void in my life. When I said I was successful, beforehand, I was working at Intel in Portland, Oregon, at Rondler Acres, a research and development facility. Down here, after going through the program, I didn't want to go back. I knew exactly what God had in store for me, what my purpose was, what I was intended for, and that was helping my brothers save themselves through God. They say if you find the cure for cancer, you're going to go to every cancer patient out there and show them what it was. Why? Because it's the cure for cancer. It's killing so many people. We have the cure for a wounded soul. If I see somebody who's struggling, I'm going to want to bring them in and show them where hope is, where safety is, where purpose is, where love is, where passion is. We're here to lead them out of the dark. Because I wouldn't have made it out of the dark alone. I needed someone to lead me. And I'm in line with our mission. And that is to save our brothers and sisters who sacrificed for this beautiful country that we have. As Tim McGraw would say, freedom ain't free. Thank you.
My name's Kenny Thomas. I'm from a small town in Coleman, Alabama. Maybe population 15,000 people. I joined the Army in 2000. I went to basic and AIT at Fort Benning, Georgia. I was in the infantry. Reported to the 101st Airborne Division, February of 2000. September 11th, 2001 is when my life changed. I called home that day. I told my mom, I'm going to war. Luckily, we didn't leave for the next 30 days. That was my first experience. Did 9 months there, came home. I got ready to redeploy to Iraq. Iraq is where everything changed for me. The Battle of Al-Hala on the invasion of Iraq is when my life just flipped upside down. I spent another 12 months there, got out, came home, thought I was doing fine, the nightmares, thought it was all normal. I tried to smoke a lot of weed to try to forget about it, relationships destroyed, everything was destroyed. I ended up being successful in college, got out and did critical care transport for a children's hospital in Birmingham. I thought that would refill and help me move forward. Money didn't do it. Like 10 years down the road, I'm 3 suicide attempts in. I'm sitting on my front porch, I got a gun, about ready to finish the job. My phone rings, and by the grace of God, I answer it. It's a friend of mine who said, "You was on my heart." I said, "Well, it's probably a good thing you called." I told him what was going on, and he He came and picked me up. 24 hours later, Camp Hope had flown me out to Houston and got me in the program. Only through Christ, surrendering to Him and letting Him fill all that emptiness I had inside me is why I'm standing here today. If it wasn't for that phone call and God working through my friends and family, my mom would have buried me 2 years ago. So Camp Hope, it changed my life and it saved my life, and that's what I'm trying to do now, is to give it to my brothers. Thank you.
Some Vietnam vets here. Always want to say welcome home. I don't have very many friends, so when I do have one around, I have to say thank you to Jerry Reed. Those, one of my few friends in this world. So thank you for being here, Jerry, to make faces at me while I try to not cry through all this. Vietnam Memorial, if you've ever been to the wall, one of the most moving, silent memorials you can ever experience. First time I was there with a Vietnam vet, given his 2 legs, Quang Nam Province, on March the 8th, 1971. And I just watched. 58,272 names are on that wall. I'm going to give you another statistic, and I will temper it with this. Suicide statistics and the VA are very difficult to track and to trust. And that's not to mean that someone's trying to do something dishonest. It's just we've not really done a good job of tracking that through the VA through the years. But when you do a Google search on Vietnam veterans and suicide, you almost always find yourself north of 250,000 Vietnam veterans whom we have lost to their own hands since coming home. Roughly 4 times the amount whose lives were taken in action we have lost after coming home. Now, we could talk for a long time about the disservice, the awful treatment that our Vietnam vets received when they came home. But we all have to agree that losing that many to suicide is absolutely unacceptable on any level. 22 flags here. A few years ago, the VA came out with their best guess that we were losing 22 veterans every single day to suicide. Now, we hear those numbers and it just kind of rolls through our brain and kind of think, well, that's a lot. Well, that's close to 9,000 a year. But let's just break it down for a second. Remember a few years ago, the Ebola virus? I believe during that entire time there were 4 lives lost on American soil to the Ebola virus. 3 of those were people who were brought in from other countries to be given care, and 1 was a caregiver. 4. Immediately, the United States government spent more than $1 billion to address that issue and to stop it. We built something like 16 medical camps in Africa to try to deal with Ebola in Africa before that disease came to America. Spent millions of dollars on that, and in those, I believe it was 16, it's been a while since I've read the story again, but somewhere around 16 medical clinics, they treated about 12 people. Think about that. Millions of American dollars spent in Africa to treat 12 people. And today, we have an issue of losing more than 20 veterans every single day to suicide, and the government still does not have a plan. In fact, my point here is it's really not to blame the VA. I'll just tell you the VA is overwhelmed. They just are. In fact, about a month ago, the VA came out with a report. Again, their latest report on veteran suicide. The number's still north of 20 every single day lost to suicide, according to their records. And here's what they said in their report. The VA said this is an urgent crisis in every community all across America. Every community. More than 20 every single day. Back to Ebola for just a minute. When they flew someone into this country with the Ebola virus, there were cameras and hours of live television, people showing us the inside of the airplane that was specially equipped to deal with Ebola. They had camera crews from every news network at the airport when the plane landed. They showed the inside of the ambulance and how it was prepared, especially for people with Ebola, to keep that disease from spreading. They showed all the equipment that the caretakers wore to protect them from Ebola. We had endless hours of television live streaming of the plane landing, them being transported into an ambulance, and cameras following them on the way to the hospital. Now, I'm sorry for all 4 of those lives were lost. I truly am. But when are we going to talk about? When are we going to seriously take this issue on of losing 20 veterans every single day? That's 20 mothers who are getting a phone call they should never get. Spouses, children that have lost their loved one, and it should not happen. Not only did the VA say that this is an urgent crisis in every community, they said this of themselves. This issue is too big for the VA alone. They admitted it. It's too big for us. We can't do it. The community is going to have to step in. So I'll just say this, and I'll try to take a couple of questions if we can, if that's all right. Is that okay? Because I could talk for hours, and we only got 5 minutes left. I'd rather you get the information you want than what I think you want. So I'll just conclude with this. 9.5 years ago, we didn't own a paperclip. We had a theory. We had a plan. For 2018, we have a budget of almost $4 million. We don't receive one dime of government money. Not a dime. It's people like you. It's people like a 7-year-old girl that when we opened Camp Hope 6.5 years ago, she saw on the news on Fox 26 that there was this place that was about to open called Camp Hope, and it interviewed a man who had been suicidal, and we came to his aid in the time of crisis, and when we showed up, HPD put their guns down, and instead of that man being killed, suicide by cop, his life was spared. Came through our program today. He's very successful back in the oil industry, doing great. His 2 little girls that were at the time, I think 8 and 6. A few months ago, he posted a picture on his Facebook page of him handing the keys to his 16-year-old daughter. You know why he was able to do that? Because there's a program, we call it PTSD Foundation of America, where one vet will take the call of another vet in crisis. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, we will meet you in the parking lot of that strip club where the HPD has their guns drawn. And we will make sure the guns are put away and you're taken care of. You can come into our program at Camp Hope. These guys that are here with us today, it's about a 6-month program. It costs them absolutely nothing. Nothing. Because of the good people of this community that hear about what's going on and understand that doling out bags of prescriptions doesn't fix a thing. And I will just say this to the Tomball Christian Business crowd. Yeah, we don't think just waving a Bible around makes it all better, but we do believe that Jesus Christ is the only hope. We do. With that, just a couple of minutes for some questions, if any of you have some questions about what we do, how we do it. Yes, sir. Currently, we have under construction 4 townhouses. Just show you how God works. 4 townhouses under construction. Those are built for families, that is to bring in the vet, the spouse, and the children. No one else in the country will do that, including the VA. No one else will bring in the family dealing with combat-related PTSD. Those houses constructed are going to be about $750,000 is what it would cost if you were just going to have someone come in and build it. We've had over $650,000 donated to that. We're about 2/3 of the way through construction, and I think we've written $30,000 in checks. So, and by the way, we didn't ask for anybody to donate to it. They heard about what we wanted to do and said, here's a check. So we do have housing for families, yes. That's one of the unique things about our organization. Someone else? Yes, sir.
Do you have volunteers that come in and help?
Yes, sir. We are very, very heavily invested in our volunteers. We have all, of course, as any nonprofit should have, we have our 990 on our website. It shows about a 8% overhead. So that is 92 cents of your dollar goes directly into saving lives. The only way we're able to do that, because we do run support groups from Seattle to Charlotte, North Carolina, to Atlanta, to San Diego. In fact, the shooting that took place last Thursday, I'll close with this because time's up. By the way, PTSDUSA.org is our website. It's on that brochure. But if you want to volunteer, if you'll go there, our volunteer forms there's 100 different ways you can volunteer. And we desperately need more volunteers. But when that guy walked into that nightclub and smoke bombs start shooting, it's just a matter of time. When the news media comes out, well, he's a Marine combat vet, and they always throw this in there, he might have PTSD. Let me just say a word about that. That's lazy reporting. That's ignorant reporting. Was I clear? Do I need to restate that? Did everybody get it? That is ignorance. Might as well say he was wearing a brown belt. It would have just as much relevance as to what that man did in that nightclub and taking innocent lives as saying he had PTSD. PTSD turns inward. It causes us to isolate, to withdraw, to avoid, not to attack. Premeditated murder is not the result of PTSD. And anyone who wants to claim that, I'll just look them square in the eye and tell them you're a bald-faced liar. And you may have PhD at the end of your name and all kinds of DDs and other Ds behind your name. You don't know. We've dealt with thousands of veterans through our program. We have some experience in this. PTSD does not cause premeditated murder. It's a false understanding of PTSD. So my encouragement to you is get educated and then get involved. Thank you all very much. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, first, we just thank all of you for being here. It's a great compliment to yourself and to the people you are sitting around. I think I've seen more veteran activities this year than I've ever seen before, which is great. We have a gentleman, Victor, who's going to come up and close us with the God Bless America. If you want to come up while I'm doing a few things here. There's I know you guys know how it is, especially when you're older, as I am, and you've learned things, you've experienced things, you've read things in the Bible that you learned or studied years ago, and then it comes back around to you, and it just nails you. I mean, it's like I didn't really understand that's what that meant. But there's a song. and I'm not going to sing it, but I want you to look it up and just get the lyrics and read it a couple, 2 or 3 times. But it's Why Me, Lord. Chris Christopherson was very popular in my time, but it's just he's admitting to the fact that he is a saved man. That why me, Lord? Why did you let me? Because I'm a sinner, and he was a good one. And then he says, "Why me, Lord?" Well, he says it must be so that I can tell others. Don't remember the exact verbiage, but so I can share with others, tell others about my experience with Jesus Christ.
I forgot to mention in my remarks that I'm from Wynwood Presbyterian Church, and there's a veteran here that wasn't introduced. Joe Dempsey, would you please stand up? He was an Apache pilot,
All right.
and together with myself and one other veteran at Wynwood Presbyterian Church, we started an outreach ministry called Warriors of God. We solicit inputs to fill backpacks to give to homeless vets. But if there's anybody in the audience that thinks we can, how many do we have in storage right now that we're going to deliver to VA? But we just as soon distribute them locally. If you know a veteran that's suffering, or if you know somebody that's living under an underpass or an overpass or a camp somewhere, a tent camp somewhere, either contact Joe or myself or call up Wynwood Presbyterian Church. We will deliver these packages, and we have them for women also. And one of the statistics that David didn't share with you, and maybe he's not even aware of it, Catholic Charities is the only institution that I know of in the greater Houston area that takes care of homeless women vets. I would hope that other churches would get involved and interested in those kind of programs that reach out to our homeless women vets. I don't know how many of these 22 are women. David, do we know? But they're kind of the forgotten element in PTSD, in my opinion. Victor's got a beautiful tenor voice. I'm going to turn it over to him.
Well, and I just wanted to say one thing, if you will indulge me. We also have Tracy from the city, who is a woman vet, and she was not on the list. But at this time, I want to ask all of you who are not veterans and who are not currently serving to stand up. Who are not veterans and who are not currently serving. Now, veterans, we give you a standing ovation. We will never forget.
So thank you so very, very much. I've really enjoyed today. Thank you.
Okay, let's stand, and we'll close with God Bless America. God bless America, land that I love, stand beside her and